Hey, how y'all doing? One sec, let's give me a sip and we'll get busy. Okay, away we go. And onward and upward. I'm gonna set up the game, set up the board, and then we'll get on to our thing. I'll clear the board. Alright. Okay. Let me make sure I have all this right here. There. There. Alright. Yeah, Smysloff is um, white, and Philip is black. Perfect. I'm looking at it from White's perspective. Okay. This is the next chapter. I mean, section inside the chapter. This is we have just started chapter 5. Sense, the sense of a chess player. So when they have a intuitive sense. Prophylactic equals time saved. Masters make all sorts of mysterious, aggressive moves in sharp positions. So, like masters will just make just an odd move. Like, why are they doing that? And then 5 or 6 moves down the road, you're like, oh, I get it now. But some of the most mysterious move uh, moves don't seem to do anything. In a Sicilian defense, when time seems to be high priority, a master may spend a tempo to shift the white king from g1 to h1, or if it castles queenside from c1 to b1. He does it. He does it in anticipation of counterplay. Anticipate future threats is usually better than responding to an immediate threat. And this is Smyslov's game versus Philip. Venice, 1857. Okay, this is one of the games that made Smyslov famous. The great attention was paid to the stunning pawn sacrifice that ripped apart White's kingside and the diff stroke that led to checkmate. But that was much later. To enjoy the liberty of attack, White first had to secure the queenside, the home of most blacks play. He begins with, "I will let you see your white, my friends." And stop right now if you want to go over the move as white. And then, so do it right now. And then I'm going to get a sip really quick, and then we're going to continue, and you can follow along or stop if we were watching this pre-recorded. Okay. White played A4 exclam. Good move. Remember, the whole idea is majority of the play for blacks on the queen side. So if Smyslov can lock down the queen side, Smyslov will have a free hand on the king side to basically storm the keep. A4 exclam. Black played. Black's not just going to sit around and say, "Oh, please shut down the queen side." No, they're going to get ready for knight to knight d7 because they want to go for everything. So Smyslov decides to do a prophylactic idea of preparation. Bishop e2 exclam here. If you notice, this prepares for the idea if black wants to play b5, then the pawn would be able to take back here, and after this pawn takes, then the bishop could grab it and be up a whole pawn. So that's the whole idea, is based over b5, and that's why bishop e2 was played. There's really no threat right at this moment of the e4 pawn, so Smyslov can make a temporary waiting move. He's also waiting for this one knight on e8 to leave. The e8 knight is kind of locked down to the protection of d6, the d6 pawn. So Smyslov actually has the position locked and ready to roll. To discourage, yep, b5, yep. Rook c1 was actually, let me see here. What did I, what's what? Black, I guess, tried queen c7 here. Smyslov played rook to c1, and then rook b8. And Smyslov then played b3 exclam. This is a really unique idea. Now that the queen side basically is total in total lockdown. The rook guards the knight, the pawn guards everything, the queen side's in lockdown. Basically, white has a free hand on the king side now. So far, white has pushed 2 pawns, retreated a bishop, placed his rook on an open file that is unlikely to open, yet he made progress by denying black his best chance for counterplay. Black wasn't done. He took aim at the e-pawn with his unused piece, knight e to f6. The reason also, if you're wondering why queen c2, was the queen wants to liberate this knight. So you have to ask yourself, why did the queen go to that move? The queen wants to liberate the knight. So that's why it's not just by happenstance that they move their pieces. Now the queen is the one that's guarding d6, but at this point a higher value piece is guarding a pawn, and a lower value piece is making that piece defend a lone pawn. And so that's why the knight is trying to earn its keep by attacking e4 and trying maybe to somehow win this bishop, maybe even implanting the bishop on, the knight on e5 would be a good idea here, maybe. Trying to then free the queen up for activity. It's going to be interesting. Queen c2. This move is kind of interesting. It frees the knight up. So the knight now has the ability of coming in and trying to get some sort of activity. Maybe not that way. Maybe knight into this might be the idea that he's looking at. Potentially knight going to c4 and taking scope on d6 would be strong. Rook, queen c2, yep. F e8. They're trying to make this knight so it doesn't work. It doesn't have the ability of going d1, e3 to c4, and yeah. So that's an interesting. The bishop just decided to retreat back at this point. This move is an interesting move for sure. What the bishop is doing, a prophylactic move. It does deprive, yes, you're thinking, oh no, it deprives the king of a flight square. Yes, it's closer to the king, and it still attacks d6. I've seen this with my own eyes, my friends, that I've actually had a game where I retreated a piece back, and my opponent forgot that I had a piece retreated on h2, and I was able to actually win a rook. So this kind of is a mental prophylactic move against your opponent. Because if your opponent isn't paying attention and then they're looking at the board, they forget that you have a bishop right here, you can actually win a queen. If they take the pawn wrong, you can pick up the queen. So just remember, this is kind of a little tricky prophylactic move. It's more of a visual prophylactic move. I like that term. Okay, enough of that. Let's continue pushing onward. So now black played h6. This is to give black a kind of pocket for his king or maybe his knight to relocate. The knight can actually go to h7 into g5 if it needed to. See, the reason you would probably want the knight to go to h7 here is because of this. Black may want to try to break down on the center, and he can crack down the position with the knight going h7. It kind of the f5 push usually happens in the King's Indian the majority of the time. This is more of a King's Indian attack. It's kind of it's very risky though in this, because this doesn't feel too King's Indian like to me. It was evident that he was running out of counterplay ideas, but White still wasn't ready to go on the offense with f4 yet. White didn't want to play f4 yet. He wanted to eliminate the ability for bishop. See, if we went f4, the bishop on g7 potentially could go to d4 check, and White wanted to eliminate that potential. So, and also deny black the ability to go have his queen go to a5 and attack our knight. So there's two ideas. So he invested a tempo and played king h1 exclam. If you wanted to stop and go over it and look at that move, more the merrier. This does a double idea. First of all, now the king, now you could play f4. You're the one with the aggression here. And second of all, you have the ability to now not worry about queen a5, and the bishop d4 has really no threat at that point. Yet another prophylactic move. Black, a world class player, had his own sense of timing and realized that white is about to turn to a slow building offense with f4 with this move. White wants to play this move here, f4, rook a, rook. I think he wrote this. It must be e rook a. It says a to rook a e1. So it must be one of the rooks. Maybe it's c to e1. Because I look in the thing and let me see. Did I overlook something? It says c1. Go figure. There must be something that I'm overlooking. It's okay. Not a problem. It's the setup's correct, but basically it's a slow build-up. Hey, how you doing? So the only one side can make several moves of improvement and plus moves. The other side is almost always losing when this happens. Black opts for knight to h7 here, and threatening to play bishop. Oops, bishop takes c3, and that's an interesting. And then the rook would black would be able to take on the rook. Ooh, cool. So yeah. Wait, okay, so your f4, okay, yep, perfect. So black went into, white went into full attack at this moment with f4. Now that their prophylactic idea of king to h1 was played, more the merrier now to go after this attack. But the bishop, actually surprisingly, for the first time in the game, white had to calculate. He concluded that f4 was sound, pawn f4. He felt that bishop takes c3 and queen takes c3, rook takes. We'll play the move for black here. This is what was actually played by black. This is what black calculated. White calculated this move here. Queen takes, rook takes. Bishop D7, D3, rook E3, and then queen to D2 gives him plenty of compensation. Understanding comp is another master talent and well explored in chapter 8. We're going to do in this Andrew Solstice what it takes to become a grandmaster, or not grandmaster, what it takes to become a master. So besides all that, and the black didn't want to basically go down that line, and the best piece black has at this present moment is actually the bishop on G7. So that's why they didn't trade it off, because the knights really aren't doing anything. F4 is a really strong move because it prevents the knight, black's knight from jumping into E5. I didn't realize how actually strong that was. And this just, in my opinion, F5 for black really just weakens the whole entire king side, and now black's the one who has to be careful with the king. Not good at all. Bishop F3 exclam here is a wonderfully crafted move here. This allows, if pawn were to take on E4, the knight could actually come in and take at this point, and basically the pawn could be pushed to and unleash all the fires here. The knight can come in and then attack here after you push. It's just so beautiful. That's a really strong move. Now the bishop is forced to actually go into a trade. This is very forcing now. And then F takes E, bishop G4. Now in about probably 2 or 3 moves, both these bishops will come alive, and you have a queen slicing here, you'll have a bishop slicing here, you'll have potentially another bishop slicing here, you'll have a rook slicing here. It's just like monstrous. It's just pain. Lots and lots. Knight HF6. This is it's trying to hold everything together. Bishop E6 check is now coming. King H7. Pawn storm is usually the slowest form of attack, but in the absence of counterplay, white felt it would succeed. It worked perfectly here. H4 exclam. And they're just gonna storm the keep here. Harry's coming, as we like to say. It's time for Harry. Send in Harry. He's our the guy. He's our pawn that will pry open the position to win. G5. Wow, I can't believe that. Oops. Sorry, I missed a row. Rook G8. Yep, this makes more sense now. And then G4 exclam again. Wow, this is an impressive feat for Smyslov for sure. Beautiful, beautiful. H5, G5, attacks the knight. Knight G4, F5 is just it's breaking the position open. Rook Gf8, F takes, king takes, bishop takes the knight now on G4, H takes G4, and then h5 check exclam. King takes h5, and then queen to g7 exclam. And there's really, in my opinion, not much that black can do anymore in this position. It's game, set, match. White won in a few moves. The prophylactic move that started the whole line was a4. That was the first one. The next prophylactic was bishop e3, a2. This next one was rook c1. The next prophylactic move was b3. And then the final one that solidified the win for this to actually work was f4, f4, and then just get the position rolling with pawns. Sometimes it seems like a waste of time, but by killing counterplay, they utterly gain time for later. They gave white a free hand to finish the attack. Note that f4 was the turning point in the game. Recognizing these moments is another ability that makes a master. So turning when is the turning point in a game is a vital decision thing for a master player. Okay, we have to get this position set up. Get this up here. Okay, let's see if I got all these positions set up right. I'm just going to do a quick check. Oops, I missed a knight. That would be helpful. Just let me see here. Okay. Oops, missed a queen. Perfect, and it's black to move here. Hug is black, H-U-G. Versus Spassky. We'll look at it from black's perspective. Okay. This is called critical. The section that a chapter we're in is sense, chess sense, and the section that we're in is a new one called critical positions. Reflecting on his long career, Boris Spassky said the greatest superiority he enjoyed over his rivals was a particular sense of timing. He had an uncanny feeling for when to mix it up, when to increase the tension, when to force matters. I was the king of critical positions, he said. So he knew exactly when the critical position had arisen, and he went right in for the critical position. Black seemed to have an edge thanks to the knight on d4. So this knight on d4 is favorable for black. White is basically recommended to take it because after c takes the c pawn, the c2 pawn ends up becoming a target. But until white solved the knight problem, he can't move his queen to a good square and connect the rooks. Therefore, this should favor black. He can make more useful moves, plus moves. Andrews also calls them plus moves, like rook d1 for black or rook ac1 for black. And nevertheless, Spassky felt this was the right time for rook takes, knight takes c, knight takes, come on, knight takes f3. The reason is that this gives him chances to force more favorable pawn structure. Bishop takes f3, and then now he can play c4. This gives him, this is the point, sorry I missed a move for white, but this c4 move gives white a more favorable pawn structure. The threat is c3. A bit of calculation revealed that the defense of rook e3, so what was actually played was b takes c. If you try to defend with rook e3 here, is met with bishop c5. After rook e2, then c3 exclam will come with a great attack, and then if bishop takes, the massive attack comes storming in with bishop takes f2 check, and then king takes, and now queen takes. And now basically white's in lockdown at this point. There's not really much that white can do here. They're in total lockdown. I was just seeing if knight even can't take, because rook would take the queen on d1 if you were thinking that. So that's why it takes here. And then Boris played bishop b4 exclam here. c3 was an interesting continuation. Bishop e7. The point of the move was at first glance to attack the knight, but in reality Boris provoked a weakness on c3. The pawns now, all those pawns are weak, and it actually also provoked See now with the c3 move, this bishop on b2 is actually a very bad piece now. It's somewhat entombed, the pawn entombed it, and it really can't do much. But you're saying, isn't the black's bishop entombed too? Well, not really, because at the right moment, the black could actually, with some trades, unleash the light squared bishop. Whites can't really do that with their dark squared bishop on b2. So this is an interesting continuation. He also can exploit, now there's a hole on b3 for the knight, potentially, if he can get there. There's also now a hole on d3 for black. These are holes that were made via the pawn push, and that will turn out in favor of Boris. Queen e2 here to defend. If the bishop tries to play bishop a3, trying to trade off, this actually favors white here. Black here. Rook takes, and then rook d3, and now the bishop's under fire, the pawn's under fire, and doubling is going to be coming into play here. Rook ad8 will be coming, and if nothing else, he can regain his pawn with a favorable advantage. Boris can. Note that black sees the moment with the first move of knight takes f3 check. That was the moment to build up the position and then win. It turns out to be the critical point of the game, because white's position becomes worse after knight after knight d7 here. Knight b3, knight e5 to go after the c4 pawn, c5, bishop takes c5, because in closed games bishops are better. Knight takes c5 was actually a mistake here. Both of white's bishops are in theory out of play right now, and the knight on b3 was white's best piece, and now that it's off the board, it's not looking too good. Rook d2 exclam is an amazing move. It has a dual threat. If queen takes, the knight's going to win the queen. And this is the basically this is resign at this moment. You potentially could try to hold with queen b5, and but then you drop a whole two pieces at this point. Knight takes here. More likely the king would have to come over, and then you just come in and grab the rook. And then if the rook slides over here, then let me see here. I'm thinking this is just winning. I'd have to do some calculation on it, but this is actually where this is the move where the game stops. So black is totally winning here. I'm going to put that move. The sense when a position is critical. Okay, they're saying that back here, rook a d1, but that doesn't change anything. I don't see what that move does. Back here, right here, rook a d1. Black was gonna meet with takes, queen takes, and then bishop b6, intending to play queen c4, and then slowly build up. And so that this is when the position is at a critical. Sensing when a position is critical frees a master to look for more candidate moves than he typically would. Normally, a master explores fewer candidate moves than non-masters. His intuitiveness limits his search by pointing out the one or two moves that are likely to be the best. But the intuitive is trumped by his sense when the position demands something more. A game-changing move, a big move. Like a game-changing move, a big move. Okay. Let's set up a position here. Oops, let me get this set up. White is Jay Pogar, so it must be Judas Pogar. And black is Gary Kasparov. This is Prague 2002. Wow, I can feel Gary's energy just storming down the king side. So it's black to move here. Okay. Let's see if I have everything in place so far. Just give me a sec. (2002). Black to play. So we're doing for time. Beautiful. Okay. The position arose in a rapid match. So this is rapid. The players don't have time to calculate to their normal extent. But after White's last move, knight c2 to b4. So this is where the knight was, and it basically came here from there. Black could appreciate how precise perilous his position was. It wasn't the triple attack on the A pawn, that worried him. There was something that matters more. The d5 square, knight d5. If White can plant a knight on that ideal outpost, Black's pieces, particularly his dark square bishop, will be stifled. Black realized he needed a big move. That often means an impossible move, one that would normally be dismissed without a glance. Here, the mega move, I will want you to stop it right here. If you're watching this on a recording, stop it and see what Gary as Black would play here against Judith Polgar. This knight wants to come into d5. What would you say the best continuation is? Stop now, and if you want to continue, just keep watching. Gary played d5 exclam. Kaboom. That's like a all guns blazing move there. Was both impossible and very good at the same time. Impossible because White controlled d5 four times. Good because at the cost of a pawn, Black obtains a powerful tactical chance with the bishop coming to d5. And right here, this move right here is a vital continuation for the bishop. White would probably, so the bishop actually at this moment took on d5. If e took on e takes d5, then bishop c5 is a really strong continuation. And then let me see here. If queen takes, bishop e6. Each has its problems, so White went for a little bit more in the position. This one move attacks Gary's rook in the corner, so it's not without Gary has to worry about this. Rook c5, bishop c5 here. Bishop takes a. Here, Black had a little bit of calculation. There was a real choice both between taking and also bishop h. So these were the two ideas here that Gary can go down. Also, another continuation was rook g. These are the ideas, three ideas that he had to consider. In the post-mortem, the players determined that king f1 was the right answer to either move and would have favored White if Black had played the mistakenly bishop h3. So Black actually played the correct, Gary, of course the attacker, played the correct, basically destructive move of rook g8. This is totally devastating at this point. If Black had tried this move here, It actually is a mistake. This is a mistake move. Because king f1, bishop takes, f2, and then g takes, h3 would be an exclam move here. And Gary's down a whole piece at this line, and so when you do a piece sacrifice, you have to follow through with all your soldiers, everything. King f1 was played here, and now bishop takes f2. Evident and eventually won. But if there was one thing that won the game, it wasn't rook g8. It wasn't bishop c5. Rather, it was the feeling that black couldn't afford to play a roundabout move, such as a5. So back here, black couldn't play pawn a5. Black couldn't waste time. There wasn't the like when you get that sense of an imperative, something's gonna happen, that critical moment, and you feel like I feel like something's gonna happen. That's kind of what a master and grandmaster, they get those feelings. They know that if they don't move at this moment, that their position's gonna basically collapse. And by learning and improving over games and taking, like what we talked about last night, Andrew Solstice said to take games to a certain position, maybe 3 or 4 games to move 20 or 15, whatever the critical moment is, and see if you can feel that sense of urgency and what move potentially would be a good move for your opponent, for the player that you're looking at. You can choose black, you could choose white, it doesn't matter. Just at a certain point, stop it and say, I feel that there is something that's gonna happen in this position, and I need to make this move. And then check it in the book or on the thing. Don't look at the thing. Find and see if you can see the move that potentially is winning. And that's always a good resource for you to be looking at. Not every game has a critical moment, far from it, but there are enough examples in chess games to provide teaching moments. One way to benefit from this is to go through unannotated master games, either with a board or clicking through them online. Try to determine in each game whether there was a turning point, just like what we said. What makes it particularly hard to sense the turning point is that there are rarely road signs to identify them. A position may seem ripe for rerouting pieces, but actually be a decisive moment. But on closer inspection, it might be better to delay it for a move or two. So you may feel like this is a critical moment, I got to do this. But then in reality, one prophylactic move could really turn the tide. And we got to see how Smyslov played that move. And we even got to see how Boris Spassky played one of the moves too. I think we have enough time for one more game. And then we will, then I'll have to say adieu. Okie dokie. Let's put in another game. Gotta love the games. Study is the only way you're going to get better, my friends. So you got to put in the time, and it will pay off. Oops. Okay. White to play here. Wow, this is a really old game. This is over 80 years. But it tells you that the sense of imperativeness is even back in 1928. Excuse me. A hiccup there. Okay. White noticed the sacrifice of rook takes d4, d6, pawn takes d6, and then queen takes f6. He realized that it would immediately get one pawn for the exchange and might add a second via rook takes d6. So he's looking at this sacrifice going, the timing seems right. White's pieces are aggressively placed as they are likely to be. If White played something else, Black would be able to improve his position by going basically knight to d7. White added all up, and then he played this move. It's like, what? What? Didn't you want to go through that? I wanted to put the move in so that we can talk about this. The idea that Black was looking at was this move here. White was looking at was this move, and basically picking up a pawn, even being an exchange down. But no. So they had to calculate well the chance for rook takes c. And this actually is lost. This makes a critical moment right to look at. Well, not exactly. It's not clear that White would stand better after rook takes d6. That is, better for Black is queen would be queen takes f6. The position, would the position be better, or would it be worse? To identify, there is really no urgency here. To identify the situation, there's no real urgency for White to basically go into such a berserker mode. So White can just improve his position in other ways, such as h4, b5 could be pawn a3, b4, and get his pawns a rolling. with the advantage he can do, then after h4 he can play g4 potentially and start a kingside avalanche. And then, like we found out, a3, b4, potentially an avalanche on the queen side. So there's really no urgency to do that. And even might be an idea is to ready the king, maybe play h4, king h2, and then get the king a prophylactic idea. That's why white played h4 was for there's not black really can't white played h4, black really can't do anything. Black's position is really in he's in a null position at this point. And what was played was h5 here to stop any more progress of h4. And then the rook then but that made this plan actually work now. Kazam. Now the urgency is here. Now there is a more urgency for this. Much stronger than earlier. E takes d, and then queen takes. Black actually played rook f8. He could try losing is actually rook d7. This is actually a losing move here because bishop to d5 would be played, and queen takes g6 is really strong. Also, if rook a6 were to be played, again the same sitch, bishop d, king f8 is also a doomed move because rook d2 with rook e3 and then queen h8 is mate. And if that's an interesting idea, continuation. So instead of that, they're trying to hold the position together. Rook takes d6. Now for the exchange, they have a 2 pawns and a bishop. Black has it's not really that good now. That's basically what I'm trying to say is queen c5. Now bishop d5 exclam. This is almost winning here, almost completely winning. The black is totally paralyzed at this point with the position. It's there's really not much that black can really do. I'm not really sure what black could do here. This is a position that most players would basically collapse under this type of pressure. So I'm thinking black played actually king h7, which probably is the best move. It doesn't get an exclam mark, but it is the best continuation for black. And so if g4 was played here, exclam, he's trying to basically rip the entire just wrench, just totally pull and break the entire fortress of the king apart. It's not good. Ugh. Black tried for counterplay with queen a3. That's just too slow. G takes h5, queen c1, and then king h2 to avoid any potential checks or anything that could happen. This just stops everything. Everything's defended. So it's interesting. That's an interesting position. Huh. Just get the king safety. Queen h6. Bishop takes f7 here. Exclam. This is actually a crushing move. That is impressive. He takes here. I know what you're thinking. What if this, right? That actually loses material to this check here. And then now you can play pawn takes check, and then checkmate. That is an incredible move. That's an incredible move. Bishop takes f7 is just like boom. It's like wow. Black was going back to h4 here. We can see that h4 gives black an opportunity to lose quickly with h5. Better would have been for black to have tried rook c5 here. Rook c5 would have been a better try. White has to find a winning idea, another winning idea, and the idea would be g4, g5. Oops, that's the idea would be pawn g5 at that point. Or even rook takes d6 at this point is playable after this move too. So this was a critical point. Seeing h4 was a vital move. Most of us would have played he says that move actually the h4 was better than this move here, and improved his white's winning chances better than this. h4 did. And so we'll call it at this point right here. And next time we're going to be looking at plus moves. Let's do a quick little wrap up on what we learned so far. So I think we learned prophylactic ideas with Smyslov and Flip. That masters have the sharp sense when to be aggressive and when to basically take a moment to stop all counterplay by one prophylactic move. In Smyslov's game, the prophylactic idea was a4, bishop that was on the first move. Smyslov's other idea was bishop e2 was another prophylactic move, and then the final prophylactic move in Smyslov's game was b3. And that readied his position also. And then one more after that. That was the king to h1. This is at Smyslov's game. This is a different one. This is a 1928 game. Yeah. I was just going over what we talked about, how Smyslov knew exactly when to play a prophylactic move, and we'll get that sense too. Just be patient with yourself, and remember that I like to say, Rome wasn't built in a day, and chess learning isn't built in a day. It's every day doing a little bit and improving over time. Critical positions. We did one on. We also did a prophylactic move. I think. Let me see. Was this the one that? this is the critical position was a Hug versus Spassky game. Spassky knew exactly when to trade off his knight. Remember when he played knight takes f3, exclam? That was an important move that Spassky had to see. It actually it made the pawn structure favor him, and so he won in an endgame. And that's the critical position. And then we had another game where Garry Kasparov, it was Judith Polgar versus Garry Kasparov. Garry Kasparov was in a critical problem. The D5 spot would have been under Judith's power if Garry hadn't have played the critical move D5 himself, his pawn move. He had that sense of urgency, and Garry then played D5 at that point. And then our last but not least one was when it felt so right to play Rook takes D6. The urgency wasn't there, and we had to make another critical positional idea. It's one move. It's kind of like combining prophylactic with just a temporary waiting move. And this H4 is what changed the tide. Excuse me. And so we have to always remember, sometimes building up is the first thing that you have to do. If you know that your opponent is basically neutralized and they can't do anything, their position's paralyzed, in another word for that, is then you may be able to have a build-up move, a prophylactic move, an ability to maybe allow the king to get to H2 here. This move prepares G4 and then H5, and basically to pry the king open after the king white gets to H2. So it's a prophylactic getting prepared move. And so we'll end on that. So we've actually learned two things today that are very vital. We've learned, okay, let's go back. Prophylactic saves time. We've also learned the critical position. And those, my friends, will never fail you when you get stronger as a chess player. You have to always keep pushing forward. Remember that the critical position and the prophylactic idea is as important as receiving the Lord Jesus as Lord and Savior of your life. You need to make that decision. That's your prophylactic idea. And then it's a critical idea right alongside with that, because where we go after we aren't here but we leave behind like recordings like this is a vital decision we all have to make. What do we do with the Lord Jesus? And that's what Bruce Lee is saying. What we have priorly learned, Bruce Lee said that you got to take what you know, be able to do something with it. Maybe teach somebody, maybe apply it over the board. Get that master sense. That's why the title is perfect. What it takes to become a chess master was a really good title that Andrew Solstice did, because those type of things make a great chess player. And you know what? We have to always remember to treasure our victories, learn from our losses. And remember that mistakes do not define you. It's how you handle the mistake that defines you. That's the basis behind the Team Chess Cruncher motto of hanging up your coats, hanging up your hats, sitting down and studying when most won't. Team Chess Cruncher does. And that makes all the difference. And as Wesley So says, serve the Lord Jesus. And as I say, God bless. And I'll see you next time on Chess Cruncher TV. Have a blessed morning, afternoon, evening, and Lord willing, I'll be back on tomorrow. We'll keep pushing forward. It also, excuse me, it also makes more sense now, my friends, when Hannibal Smith said, even inside of a random position, there's always a plan. There's always an urgency. Sometimes you have to build up and then unleash all the fire, or the artillery attack with our last game with the rooks coming down and smash, 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 and the queen takes. So Two thumbs up. Hoorah. Be blessed. Keep pushing forward. Keep learning and improving. And if you like what you see, click follow. You can also basically just remember that learning is fun and improving. And I remember what International Master Andrew Martin said. Take the amount of time that you play. If you play 90%, study 10, switch it, and you'll improve, my friends. Okay, two thumbs up. Hoorah, be blessed. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.